He was trained by the very people who now call him a threat. The words of General Michael Langley echoed across international headlines when he labeled Captain Ibrahim Traore a danger to his own people. But what the American general failed to mention was his own military's role in training the man who now stands as a symbol of African resistance. Today, we reveal the untold story of how Traoré went from American military trainee to becoming the leader who expelled Western forces from his homeland. This twist of fate exposes the hypocrisy at the heart of Western military strategy in Africa, training leaders who later reject their influence when they witness the exploitation firsthand. What happens when the student becomes the master? Ibrahim Traoré's journey began far from the presidential palace in Ouagadougou, in the classrooms and training grounds of American military programs. As a young officer, he stood shoulder to shoulder with American instructors, absorbing tactical knowledge and leadership principles from the same military that would later label him a threat. The American military training programs across Africa have long aimed to create partners aligned with Western security interests. These programs teach not just combat skills, but also convey ideas about governance, security, and international relations. For Traoré, these lessons came with an unexpected side effect. They gave him the analytical tools to later identify the patterns of resource extraction happening in his homeland. During his time in America, Traoré learned strategic thinking, organizational leadership, and counterinsurgency tactics. He studied the language of security cooperation and international diplomacy. American instructors praised his quick mind and dedication, seeing in him the model of an officer who would return home to implement Western security frameworks in Burkina Faso. But the Burkina Faso that welcomed Traoré back told a different story than the one presented in American training manuals. He witnessed crushing poverty in a country rich with gold. Foreign corporations extracted minerals while local communities saw minimal benefits. The security situation deteriorated despite years of Western military presence. The contrast between what he had been taught about development and what he observed created a growing disconnect in his mind. In the gold mining regions, Traoré saw firsthand how foreign companies operated with minimal oversight, their profits flowing overseas while Burkinabe people lived in poverty beside treasure-filled earth. The security training he received suddenly seemed incomplete, addressing symptoms of instability while ignoring the economic exploitation that fueled discontent. His American education had given him a window into how global power works. In training sessions about international relations, he had listened as instructors explained the importance of stable governments for American interests. Now he recognized how stability often meant maintaining systems that benefited outside powers at the expense of African nations. The internal conflict grew stronger. His training had prepared him to be a reliable partner to Western military interests, but his conscience pulled him toward addressing the root causes of his country's struggles. The tactical skills he learned became tools not for maintaining the status quo, but for challenging it. His understanding of command structures and public communication became assets for a different kind of mission than his American trainers had envisioned. By September 2022, the gap between what Western powers expected from their military trainees and what Burkina Faso needed had become too wide for Traoré to ignore. The security situation continued to worsen, with extremist groups controlling large portions of the country. The previous military government, itself in power less than a year, had failed to address the crisis. Traoré used his military training to organize fellow officers who shared his frustration. They planned and executed a takeover that surprised Western intelligence agencies. At 34 years old, Captain Ibrahim Traoré became the youngest head of state in the world. In his first address to the nation, he spoke not of ideology but of practical concerns: security, sovereignty, and the right of Burkinabe people to benefit from their country's resources. The skills meant to make him a reliable partner for Western interests had instead equipped him to challenge those very interests. His American training in strategic thinking now served a different master: the aspirations of his own people for true independence. But Traoré's awakening was just beginning. The true test of his leadership would come when he faced direct challenge from his former mentors. The confrontation that would define his place in history was approaching, one that would transform a military captain into a symbol of African resistance. The words cut through the diplomatic noise. a threat to his own people. With this statement, General Michael Langley, head of U.S. Africa Command, unknowingly gave Traoré the push that would transform him from military leader to national symbol. The timing couldn't have been more critical. Traoré had just begun taking steps to assert control over Burkina Faso's resources and questioning decades of Western influence. Langley's words came during a period of growing tension between the United States and Burkina Faso. The young captain had already begun moving away from traditional Western partnerships, questioning arrangements that had been in place since the country's independence. The American general's statement wasn't just a casual remark. It represented the official position of AFRI-COM, the U.S. military command responsible for operations across Africa. For Traoré, being labeled a threat carried serious implications. Throughout African history, such declarations from Western powers have often preceded interventions, sanctions, or covert operations against leaders who challenge the established order. The danger was real. Once officially branded a threat by the United States, Traoré faced potential isolation on the international stage. Yet within this danger lay opportunity. Langley's statement revealed the true nature of the relationship, not one of equal partners, but of a controlling power attempting to discipline a subordinate who had stepped out of line. For many Burkinabe citizens, the American general's words confirmed what they already suspected about foreign influence in their country. The accusation that Traoré threatened his own people contradicted the reality on the ground. In markets, schools, and villages across Burkina Faso, his popularity continued to grow. Citizens saw in him someone willing to challenge the systems that had kept their country dependent and poor despite its natural wealth. Crowds gathered spontaneously to support him, carrying his portrait through the streets of Ouagadougou in direct defiance of Langley's characterization. The multiple assassination attempts against Traoré since taking power follow a disturbing pattern familiar in African politics. Leaders who challenge Western control of resources often face violent removal. From Patrice Lumumba in Congo to Thomas Sankara, Traoré's predecessor in Burkina Faso decades earlier, history shows the deadly consequences of challenging foreign interests. Langley's statement fits into a broader pattern of demonizing African leaders who assert sovereignty over their natural resources. As noted by analyst Damon K. Jones in Black Westchester magazine, such accusations are frequently a strategic move to maintain Western influence in the region, potentially justifying sanctions, covert operations, or even military intervention. The playbook remains consistent. Label a leader dangerous, question their legitimacy, then take action to replace them with someone more amenable to foreign interests. Rather than retreat, Traoré embraced the moment. He addressed citizens directly through radio broadcasts and public appearances, turning what could have been international isolation into a rallying point for national pride. "When they call me a threat," he told a crowd in Bobo Dioulasso, "they mean I threaten their control of our gold, our land, our future." The critical choice facing Traoré became clear: back down and accommodate Western demands, or double down on his vision of true independence for Burkina Faso. With the eyes of his nation upon him, he chose the latter path. In a carefully orchestrated address broadcast nationwide, Traoré directly responded to Langley. "The general who trained me now calls me a threat," he stated calmly. "What he doesn't understand is that the training I received taught me to protect my people, not just from terrorism, but from all threats to their well-being, including economic exploitation." In that moment, the transformation was complete. From trainee to independent leader, from student to challenger. With the gauntlet thrown down, Traoré now had to prove he could do more than talk. He needed to show his people a different path forward, one that would turn the control of Burkina Faso's resources back to its citizens and break the cycle of foreign domination that had shaped the country's history since independence. What does true independence look like in action? For Traoré, it meant touching the one thing foreign powers hold most sacred: control of Burkina Faso's gold. Before his rise to power, the country's vast gold reserves fell largely under foreign control. Western mining companies extracted the precious metal, taking the lion's share of profits while leaving minimal revenue for the Burkinabe people. Despite being Africa's fourth largest gold producer, Burkina Faso remained one of the world's poorest countries. The country's gold mines operated through a system that benefited shareholders in Paris, London, and Toronto far more than citizens of Ouagadougou. Foreign companies received generous tax breaks and paid royalty rates as low as 3% in some cases. Local communities near mining operations often face displacement, environmental damage, and little compensation. The wealth flowing from Burkina Faso's soil rarely translated into schools, hospitals, or opportunities for its people. Traoré changed this arrangement with remarkable speed. His government reviewed and renegotiated mining contracts, demanding higher royalty payments and greater local ownership stakes. He implemented measures requiring mining companies to purchase supplies from Burkinabe businesses when possible. Most boldly, he nationalized certain mining operations deemed especially valuable to national interests. These weren't small symbolic gestures. They represented a fundamental restructuring of who benefits from Burkina Faso's natural wealth. The international response came swiftly. Western financial publications warned of investment risk and dangerous precedent. Behind closed doors, diplomatic pressure mounted. Threats of economic sanctions circulated through international banking channels. Media outlets that had rarely covered Burkina Faso suddenly produced stories questioning Traoré's legitimacy and governance. The pattern was familiar to anyone who had studied how Western powers respond when their economic interests face challenge in Africa. Despite the pressure, Traoré directed the newly captured revenue toward visible improvements. Construction began on rural roads connecting farming communities to markets. Medical clinics appeared in regions long neglected by government services. School construction accelerated, with particular focus on technical education. The message became clear: gold from Burkinabe soil would now benefit Burkinabe people. Neighboring countries took notice. Mali and Niger, facing similar challenges with resource exploitation and security threats, found in Traoré's approach a model worth following. Leaders in these countries implemented their own resource reclamation efforts. Formal cooperation grew into the Alliance of Sahel States, a mutual defense and economic partnership binding the three nations together. The alliance strengthened each country's position. When Western powers applied pressure to one nation, the others provided economic support and diplomatic backing. What might have isolated Burkina Faso alone became a regional movement with the alliance. Their united front created a critical mass that proved difficult for outside powers to divide and conquer through traditional means. Perhaps the clearest demonstration of this new confidence came with the expulsion of French troops from all three countries. For decades, French military presence represented the continuation of colonial influence under the guise of security cooperation. The departure of these forces marked a watershed moment in the region's push for true sovereignty. This alliance has created a new power dynamic in West Africa. Traoré's actions are a direct challenge to those who profit from Africa's resources while keeping its people in chains of dependency, notes one regional analyst. By working together, these nations have begun reshaping rules that have governed resource extraction since independence. Traoré has emerged as a key architect of this vision, transforming from military captain to regional leader in remarkably short time. https://www.thecoli.com Threads Burkina Faso's President Ibrahim Traore responds to Sambo is general. Michael Langley saying he's a threat to Burkinabe. People.1080867/page 2. The Alliance of Sahel States represents a direct rejection of AFRICOM's influence and the broader Western military presence that has shaped the region for generations. Their cooperation challenges decades of resource exploitation and outlines a possible new model for African independence. But every hero's journey faces its ultimate test. For Traoré and his allies, the greatest challenges may still lie ahead. The forces opposing true African sovereignty have centuries of experience maintaining control through various means. Ibrahim Traoré stands at a crossroads of history. Once an American military trainee, now he leads a movement challenging those same powers. His story reveals how true leadership emerges when someone finds the courage to question their teachers. The young captain's transformation reminds us that skills can serve different masters. The tactical knowledge he gained now protects his nation's resources rather than Western interests. The Alliance of Sahel States represents a direct challenge to established power structures in Africa. As they fight for control of their own resources and future, The world watches to see if Traore's vision will inspire a new chapter in Africa's long struggle for true independence.